The Zorathian Empire, an ancient and imposing civilization, spanned across thousands of star systems, their reach as vast as their pride. For millennia, they had crushed every race that dared to challenge them, their technology far surpassing that of any species in the galaxy. To the Zorathians, their rule was unshakable. The universe, in their eyes, belonged to them, and no one could rise against their dominance. Under the command of Admiral Terex, the Zorathian fleet was preparing for its next conquest: Earth. Small blue planet on the edge of a forgotten galaxy, Earth seemed to be nothing more than a distant outpost of no real consequence. The inhabitants of this planet were thought to be primitive, their technology crude, their societies divided. The Zorathians scoffed at the very idea that such a world could pose any threat. Their intelligence suggested that the humans would fall without a fight, their resistance easily crushed beneath the might of the Zorathian forces. Earth, after all, had never known true war on a galactic scale. Admiral Terex was confident. His fleet was unmatched, and his strategy was flawless. The first strike was swift, brutal, and efficient. The Zorathians moved in quickly, targeting Earth's major cities and military installations. Their advanced ships tore through Earth's defenses, leaving devastation in their wake. It seemed as though the invasion would be over before it even began. But the humans, unexpectedly, fought back. At first, the Zorathians couldn't believe their eyes. The humans, with their seemingly outdated technology, were organizing a defense. They were adapting faster than expected, using guerrilla tactics and clever strategies that the Zorathians had never encountered. Earth's military, led by commanders who had never before fought on such a scale, was outnumbered, but not outwitted. The humans fought with a kind of ferocity and tenacity that even the Zorathians had trouble understanding. Their resistance was not simply about the weapons they used, but the unyielding spirit behind them. They fought with creativity, turning their limited resources into surprising weapons of war. What seemed like a primitive defense to the Zorathians was, in fact, an ingenious strategy of survival. Admiral Terex, who had believed Earth's defeat would be quick and easy, was forced to rethink his approach. Earth's forces, though smaller, were far more unpredictable than any of the Zorathians had accounted for. Human fighters, using modified civilian technology and hastily constructed warships, began launching counterattacks against the invaders. The Zorathians were baffled. They had expected to face another civilization that would crumble under their advanced weaponry, yet the humans were proving to be a tougher adversary than anyone could have imagined. In the skies above Earth, battles raged as human pilots outmaneuvered Zorathian ships in ways that defied all the odds. On the ground, soldiers fought tooth and nail, refusing to yield an inch of their home. The Zorathian fleet, though powerful, began to suffer from unexpected ambushes and strikes. It wasn't just the humans' technology that surprised the invaders. It was their willingness to adapt, to learn from each encounter, and to push forward even when defeat seemed inevitable. In one particular clash, a small group of human engineers managed to capture a Zorathian warship. They quickly reverse-engineered its technology, and soon Earth was armed with the same powerful weapons that the invaders had used against them. The Zorathians were stunned as the humans used their own tactics against them. The invaders were starting to feel the sting of their arrogance. What they had thought was a simple conquest had now become a prolonged struggle, one that was starting to tilt in favor of the humans. Admiral Terex, still confident in his victory, could not deny that the humans were proving to be far more resourceful than he had ever imagined. He had underestimated them, and now the galaxy would begin to see the cost of that mistake. The Zorathian Empire, once thought to be invincible, was facing something it had never encountered before, a species that refused to back down, no matter the odds. The tide was beginning to turn, and the Zorathians were about to discover that their greatest enemy was not their superior technology, but the unbreakable will of humanity. The first battle over Earth had ended in unexpected chaos. The Zorathian fleet, once confident in their ability to crush the humans quickly, was forced to retreat. Their ships had been damaged, their forces scattered, and they had suffered far more losses than they ever anticipated. The humans, using clever tactics, had outsmarted their technologically superior enemies. Guerrilla warfare had been the key. Small, fast ships and civilian technologies, combined with the humans' creativity and adaptability, had turned the tides against the invaders. It wasn't just a fight for survival, it had become a fight for dignity, for their very existence. The Zorathians, despite their vast power, had underestimated Earth's will to resist, and it had cost them dearly. Commander Jake Carter, a seasoned leader of Earth's military, stood at the forefront of this resistance. He had seen wars before, but nothing like this. This was different. The stakes were higher, the enemy more ruthless. But Carter wasn't one to back down. His instincts and quick thinking had saved Earth in more ways than one. During a pivotal planetary defense mission, he had orchestrated a move that shocked even his own forces. With a risky maneuver, Carter managed to capture a Zorathian warship, a symbol of their advanced technology. It was a moment that changed everything. This warship, though heavily damaged, held the key to understanding the Zorathian technology, something that could level the playing field and give humanity a fighting chance. Back on Earth, Carter's success ignited something bigger. A team of scientists, engineers, and military leaders came together, pooling their knowledge and skills to reverse engineer the alien ship. For the first time, the humans had access to Zorathian tech, weaponry, shields, and propulsion systems far beyond anything Earth had ever seen. But rather than relying solely on these discoveries, humanity did what it did best. They adapted. Scientists tweaked the alien technology, engineers improved it, and the military learned how to use it in unexpected ways. What was once a powerful tool for oppression was now turned into a weapon of rebellion. Meanwhile, the Zorathian Council, still convinced that Earth's defiance would be short-lived, began making plans to launch a full-scale retaliation. Their fleet was massive, and they believed a few more battles would be enough to crush the humans once and for all. But Earth had changed. They had learned from their first defeat, and the loss of one battle was not enough to break their spirit. In fact, it had united them. Commander Carter's victory had sparked something within humanity, a collective resolve, a shared understanding that they were capable of far more than they had ever believed. Earth's once divided forces were now coming together, forming an alliance of scientists, engineers, and military strategists, all with one goal: to turn Earth into a formidable opponent. The humans, no longer just a scattered group of nations, were now a united front, ready to fight for their survival. They had learned that they could outthink the Zorathians, and with each victory, they became bolder. They used their advantage of surprise and ingenuity to strike back, hitting the invaders where they least expected it. They didn't just want to defend their planet anymore. They wanted to take the fight to the stars. As the Zorathians sent reinforcements, expecting to wipe out the last remnants of human resistance, they found themselves up against a much stronger force. The humans had become more than just a nuisance. They were now a serious threat. Earth had quickly transformed from a vulnerable, primitive planet into a force that could stand toe-to-toe with the mighty Zorathians. The invaders were caught off guard once again. They had believed the humans would be easily crushed, but the humans had something the Zorathians didn't: unity, creativity, and an unshakable determination. And as the Zorathian ships prepared to launch their final assault, they were faced with the terrifying realization that the humans were not just fighting for their survival, they were fighting for the future of their species. And they would stop at nothing to ensure victory. As the Zorathian Empire prepared to unleash its full might, sending reinforcements to crush humanity once and for all, they did not realize just how much Earth had changed. The humans had adapted in ways the Zorathians could never have predicted. Armed with newly acquired alien technology and an insatiable desire for survival, Earth's warships now stood toe-to-toe with the once dominant Zorathian fleet. Their ships were faster, stronger, and more unpredictable. And at the heart of this, growing human resistance was Commander Jake Carter, whose unshakable confidence and tactical genius were becoming legendary across the galaxy. With each strike, each battle, Carter led his forces deeper into Zorathian-held space, pushing them back, one star system at a time. The Zorathians, for the first time in their history, were forced to play defense, but they still underestimated the true depth of human potential. While Zorathian fleets continued to clash with human forces in the cold depths of space, the humans were proving themselves to be more than just skilled fighters. They were masters of deception. Earth's fleets began to disappear and reappear, at will, employing guerrilla tactics that threw the invaders into confusion. Disguised as ordinary civilian ships, humanity's forces infiltrated deep into Zorathian territory, striking at strategic targets before vanishing into the void. It was as if the humans were ghosts, haunting the Zorathians at every turn. The Zorathian command structure, used to seeing their enemies in open combat, was now being torn apart by stealth, sabotage, and cunning. Where the Zorathians expected a direct assault, they found themselves walking into traps set by the very people they had once dismissed as weak and primitive. But the humans were not content to simply fight back. No, they were on a mission to turn the tide in their favor, and nothing was going to stop them. In a daring and unprecedented move, Carter led a small, elite human task force on a covert mission to the heart of Zorathian space, their capital, a heavily guarded fortress world that no one dared approach. The operation was risky, a suicide mission by all accounts, but Carter was no stranger to danger. His team infiltrated Zorathian-controlled space, using a mix of advanced human stealth technology and the element of surprise. As they slipped past enemy defenses and made their way deep into the Zorathian capital, the gravity of their mission weighed on them. They weren't just here to fight, they were here to cripple the Zorathian Empire from within. The mission culminated in an audacious strike against the very heart of the Zorathian fleet's command network. A virus, designed and planted by human engineers, spread like wildfire through the Zorathian systems, crippling their ability to communicate, coordinate, and control their forces. The Zorathians, who had prided themselves on their flawless command structures, were thrown into disarray. Fleet movements became erratic, and the once imposing empire now appeared weak, vulnerable, and disorganized. The virus had done its job. It had shattered the Zorathian Empire's command center, and with it, their grip on power. Back on Earth, the humans knew they had struck a decisive blow. The Zorathians, in their arrogance, had assumed that their technology, their fleets, and their advanced systems were invincible. But now, the very foundation of their empire had been shaken. The human task force's success was not just a victory, it was a turning point. As the Zorathians scrambled to recover from the virus attack, human forces seized the opportunity. They launched coordinated offensives across multiple star systems, their attacks faster and more relentless than ever. The Zorathians, still struggling to regain their footing, found themselves falling further and further behind. It was clear now. The humans were no longer the underdogs. They had gained a significant foothold, and the balance of power in the galaxy was shifting. The Zorathians were beginning to realize the magnitude of their mistake. The humans were not just fighting to survive. They were fighting to win, to take back what had been stolen from them, and to prove that no empire, no matter how powerful, could crush the spirit of a people who refused to surrender. But by the time the Zorathians fully understood the true strength of their human adversaries, it was already too late. The tides had turned. The galaxy would never be the same again. As the human forces continued to chip away at the mighty Zorathian Empire, Emperor Zarok, the ruthless ruler of the invaders, could no longer ignore the threat Earth posed. The resistance had gone from a minor annoyance to a full-scale war that was draining the Zorathian resources and morale. Desperation began to creep into the Zorathian ranks, and Zarok, once confident in his empire's dominance, finally acknowledged the gravity of the situation. For the first time in his reign, he felt real fear. With his empire on the brink of collapse, Zarok made the boldest and most dangerous decision of his career: a full-scale invasion of Earth. He would personally oversee the attack, deploying his most elite soldiers and his most advanced war machines, in one final attempt to crush humanity once and for all. The Zorathians, with their overwhelming firepower, were certain they could break Earth's defenses in one crushing blow. But they had underestimated the humans' ability to adapt. Over the course of the war, humanity had embraced the mindset of defenders, growing more unified and resolute with every battle. What was once a fragmented world, divided by national borders and politics, had become a single, focused force. Earth's military leaders had studied Zorathian tactics, reverse-engineered their technology, and adapted it to human strategies. The humans had learned how to think like their enemy, using Zorathian methods against them. They had developed new countermeasures, new tactics, and a deeper understanding of how to strike back. This was no longer a battle between two civilizations. It was a struggle for survival, and the humans were no longer afraid. Commander Jake Carter, now a hero of Earth, stood at the forefront of humanity's defense. The battle for Earth would be the largest and most brutal contest yet. Carter's forces prepared for the coming onslaught, knowing the Zorathians would hold nothing back. The sky above Earth darkened with the arrival of thousands of Zorathian warships, and the ground below shook as their most powerful machines landed, ready to tear apart everything in their path. The battle that followed was fierce and chaotic, a storm of fire and destruction that raged across cities and landscapes. Both sides suffered heavy casualties, but the humans, though outnumbered, were determined to defend their home. What gave the humans an edge was their ability to adapt and surprise. The Zorathians, with all their strength and technology, could not predict the humans' next move. Carter and his team had learned that the key to survival was to keep their enemies off balance. The humans launched unexpected counterattacks, using the Zorathian war machines against them and striking at weak points the invaders had never considered. The battle became a blur of explosions, dogfights in the skies, and ground combat that seemed to shift with every passing hour. The humans, though battered and bruised, fought with an intensity that kept the Zorathians guessing. As the conflict dragged on, Carter and his inner circle began to notice something strange. Amid the chaos, they realized that the Zorathian forces were becoming more disorganized. The leadership that had once been so efficient and fearsome was faltering. Carter's team dug into the intelligence they had gathered, analyzing the Zorathian command structure, and soon they discovered something staggering. Emperor Zarok, the supposed invincible ruler, was vulnerable. The Zorathian command system, though vast and complex, had a critical flaw. The emperor was too centralized, too reliant on his own control. If the humans could strike at Zarok himself, they could destabilize the entire Zorathian war effort. This revelation sent a ripple of excitement through Earth's leadership. They now had a target, a chance to end the war with one decisive strike. Carter knew this would be their moment, their best opportunity to finally turn the tide in their favor. The plan was risky, but if successful, it could cripple the Zorathian forces once and for all. But timing would be everything. As the battle for Earth raged on, Carter and his team began preparing for the mission of a lifetime, a direct assault on the heart of the Zorathian command, with the fate of humanity hanging in the balance. The stakes had never been higher, and the humans knew they could not afford to fail. The heart of the empire, once thought impenetrable, now lay open to attack. The battle for Earth had become a battle for the galaxy's future. The battle for Earth had reached its breaking point. Commander Jake Carter, the symbol of human resistance, had led his forces through countless skirmishes. But now the war was at its most critical juncture. Intelligence had confirmed that the Zorathian Emperor, Zarok, was at the heart of the enemy's flagship, surrounded by his most elite guards and military officers. If the humans could strike him down, it would shake the very foundation of the Zorathian Empire, possibly bringing the entire war to an end. It was a mission of unparalleled risk, one that could either end in victory or doom humanity's final hope. Carter knew this would be his most dangerous operation yet, but he also understood its importance. If they were going to win, they needed to take out the head of the serpent. A small team of Earth's most elite soldiers, chosen for their skill and stealth, was assembled for the mission. They boarded a covert vessel designed to blend in with the Zorathian fleet's own ships. For hours, they silently approached the massive Zorathian flagship, its imposing form looming like a shadow in space. The humans knew they had to be quick and silent. Any alert or misstep would end their mission before it even began. As they infiltrated the ship, they faced countless obstacles: locked doors, heavily armed guards, and corridors guarded by the most advanced security systems the Zorathians had. But Carter and his team were no strangers to danger. Using a combination of human ingenuity and stolen Zorathian technology, they bypassed the security systems, slipping through the ship's inner sanctums like ghosts. Every step brought them closer to Zarok, but the risks grew higher with each passing moment. The tension was thick as they approached the Emperor's inner chamber. They knew that if they failed, the entire fleet would be mobilized to destroy them. But Carter was focused, his mind sharp with a singular purpose: to eliminate Zarok and end the Zorathian reign. The moment they breached the chamber, however, they found themselves face to face with the Emperor's personal guard, elite warriors known for their ruthlessness and skill. A firefight erupted, but Carter's team was prepared. Despite being outnumbered, they fought with precision, relying on quick thinking and superior tactics to overcome their foes. It was a brutal fight, but as the last guard fell, they moved on toward the Emperor's throne room. And then, at last, there he was, Emperor Zarok, standing tall and imposing, his regal presence almost suffocating in its grandeur. For a moment, there was only silence as Carter and Zarok locked eyes. The Emperor, confident in his invincibility, sneered. He had never been truly challenged before. To him, the humans were nothing more than insects, insignificant and weak. He couldn't fathom how they had managed to infiltrate his ship or how they had survived this long in a war they had no right to fight. But Carter, resolute and calm, stepped forward. He knew this was the moment. Zarok's arrogance would be his downfall. The confrontation was intense. Zarok, towering and physically imposing, was a formidable opponent in hand-to-hand combat, his Zorathian strength unmatched by any human. But Carter was not merely fighting with his body, he was fighting with his mind. While Zarok relied on brute strength, Carter's greatest asset was his adaptability and ingenuity. The two clashed in a fierce duel, the sound of their strikes echoing through the vast chamber. Zarok's rage grew as Carter evaded his blows and turned the tide in his favor, using the environment to his advantage. But the Emperor, blinded by his own superiority, couldn't anticipate the depths of human determination. Carter outmaneuvered him, exploiting weaknesses in the Zorathian's mindset, and then, with one final brilliant move, Carter disarmed Zarok and brought the Emperor to his knees. Zarok, who had believed he was invincible, now lay defeated at the hands of a human. The Emperor's pride and hubris had been his undoing. As the Zorathian leader fell, the echoes of his reign crumbled. The once unshakable Zorathian Empire was left leaderless and vulnerable, a shell of its former self. Without Zarok, the Zarathian command structure began to unravel. The remaining fleet commanders, no longer united under a central authority, were left in confusion and disarray. Carter's daring mission had succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. The heart of the Empire had been pierced, and the invaders' once unstoppable momentum had come to a halt. As the news of Xeroc's fall spread across the galaxy, hope surged in the hearts of the humans. The fight was far from over, but with their enemy in disarray, they knew that victory was now within reach. The Zarathian Empire had fallen, and humanity stood stronger than ever before. With Emperor Xeroc's death, the once unshakable Zarathian Empire began to unravel at a terrifying pace. The loss of their leader sent shockwaves through the Empire, and without the central figure that had held everything together, chaos erupted. The Zarathian fleets, once feared across the galaxy, were now scattered, disorganized, and leaderless. The commanding officers, without clear direction, were left to fend for themselves, each group struggling to maintain control over their territories. The very foundation of the Zarathian rule was crumbling. Ships that had once filled the skies, in majestic formations, were now easy targets for humanity's more focused and relentless attacks. As each Zarathian stronghold fell, the tide of the war continued to shift dramatically in favor of the humans. It was no longer a war of survival. It was a pursuit of total victory. Humanity, now armed with advanced Zarathian technology and an unwavering will to protect their future, had become the new power in the galaxy. The strategies that had once made Earth seem insignificant in the eyes of the Empire were now proving to be the key to humanity's triumph. Earth's military forces, along with their allies, launched coordinated offensives across the galaxy, hunting down the remnants of the Zarathian fleet one by one. No corner of the galaxy was safe from the human advance. The battles were no longer desperate struggles for survival. They were calculated strikes that dismantled the last vestiges of Zarathian power. Zarathian colonies, once enslaved and controlled with an iron grip, were freed as the humans spread their influence farther than anyone had anticipated. Where the Zarathians had imposed fear, humanity brought hope. Where the Zarathians had brought oppression, humans offered a chance at freedom. As Earth's influence expanded, a new chapter in the galaxy's history began to unfold. Former Zarathian colonies, long under the boot of their conquerors, began to see humanity as more than just their liberators. They saw Earth as a new leader, one that understood their suffering and was ready to build a more just and equitable future. Humans formed alliances with other oppressed species, building a coalition that united those who had been silenced under the Zarathian yoke. The galaxy, once a fractured and disjointed place, began to find its new rhythm. The old empires fell, and new systems of governance, more inclusive and more cooperative, took shape. Meanwhile, the remnants of the Zarathian forces, broken and leaderless, struggled to survive in a galaxy that no longer belonged to them. Their ships, once feared, were now fleeing, evading pursuit wherever they could, but the humans were relentless. Every escape route was closed off. The once proud Zarathian Empire, with its mighty fleets and vast holdings, was reduced to a shadow of its former self. What had once been a symbol of strength and dominance was now a broken remnant of its past glory. The Zarathians, who had long looked down on other species, now found themselves fighting for survival, trying to hold on to scraps of their former power. But they had underestimated the resilience and ingenuity of humanity, and now they were paying the price. The balance of power in the galaxy had fundamentally shifted. Humanity had proven that, against all odds, it could rise from the brink of destruction and take control of its fate. The galaxy was no longer a place where empires could simply impose their will through fear and domination. Instead, it was a place where determination, adaptability, and the spirit of survival could turn the tide in favor of those who dared to resist. With Earth at its center, humanity stood ready to rebuild the galaxy, forging alliances and establishing a new order based on cooperation and freedom. But as the Zorathians struggled to survive, there was one undeniable truth. The once mighty empire had fallen. And humanity, the species they had once thought too weak to ever challenge them, had become the galaxy's new power. The Zorathian Empire was no more, and Earth's resilience had proven to be the most powerful force in the universe. The war was over, but the legacy of humanity's victory would echo through the stars for generations to come. The galaxy, once scarred by war and domination, had entered a new age. The threat that had loomed over every corner of the universe, the mighty Zorathian Empire, was no more. Earth, a planet once overlooked and underestimated, now stood as the center of a vast, thriving intergalactic alliance. The remnants of the Zorathian Empire, scattered and broken, still clung to the fringes of the galaxy, but their once great fleets were nothing more than shadows of the past. With the fall of their empire, they had lost not only their power but their influence, while the galaxy began to settle into an era of peace. Humanity had not only survived the impossible, but had emerged as the galaxy's new leaders. And at the heart of it all was Commander Jake Carter, the man who had led Earth from the brink of extinction to the pinnacle of galactic power. The road to peace had not been easy. The scars of war were still visible in the form of destroyed Zorathian strongholds and abandoned battlefields. But Earth, under Carter's leadership, had spearheaded the efforts to rebuild. The destruction that had once threatened to consume the galaxy was now the foundation of a new era of unity. Earth was no longer the isolated planet it had once been, struggling under the weight of its smallness in the vastness of space. It was now a beacon of hope and strength, bringing together countless civilizations that had once been divided by fear, oppression, and hatred. Humanity had proven its resilience, its adaptability, and its incredible capacity to turn adversity into opportunity. The Intergalactic Alliance, now united under a common cause of peace and prosperity, stood as a testament to what could be achieved when diverse species came together, putting aside their differences for the greater good. Commander Carter, now a hero across the galaxy, found himself in a new role. No longer just a soldier, he was a leader and a symbol of humanity's triumph over overwhelming odds. But despite the accolades and honors, Carter remained humble, focused on the task at hand, rebuilding a galaxy torn by centuries of conflict. His leadership had been instrumental in the liberation of countless planets, and now it was essential in ensuring that this peace would last. Earth's military and scientific communities worked hand in hand, assisting in the reconstruction of planets once controlled by the Zorathians, offering aid to species that had suffered under the Empire's cruel grip. Humanity's influence spread far beyond Earth's borders, with former enemies becoming allies and new friendships forged in the fires of war. As the years passed, the once chaotic galaxy began to stabilize. The central government of the Intergalactic Alliance took shape, and Earth became its heart. Humans, once seen as nothing more than primitive beings, had become the guiding force for the future. They had shown the galaxy that no matter the size of the enemy, no matter the odds, a species determined to survive and fight for its future could change the course of history. The Zorathian Empire, which had once seemed invincible, lay in ruins, a reminder to all of the price paid for underestimating humanity. The galaxy's new era was one of cooperation and growth. Species that had once been enemies now worked side by side, sharing knowledge, technology, and resources to ensure that no one would ever again have to live in fear. Earth, the once tiny blue planet, had become the center of this new age, a place where diversity was celebrated and where every species had a voice in shaping the future. The scars of war were still present, but they no longer defined the galaxy. Instead, the galaxy was defined by hope, by a shared vision for a better tomorrow. For Carter, watching the galaxy come together was a bittersweet victory. The sacrifices made by so many, the countless lives lost in the fight for freedom, were not forgotten. But as he looked out over the thriving United Galaxy, he knew that humanity had done something extraordinary. They had taken their place in the stars, not as survivors, but as leaders. The day the Zorathians underestimated humanity was the day the galaxy changed forever. And as peace settled over the universe, it was clear that humanity would forever be the galaxy's new guiding force, shaping the future for generations to come. The Zorathian Empire was no more, but its downfall would be remembered as the moment when humanity proved its place in the cosmos. The new dawn had arrived,